The university courtyard buzzed with life as students from all over the world gathered for the International Student Welcome Fair. Ashanti, a young woman with a radiant smile and a quiet determination, stood near the entrance, clutching a flyer about study groups. Coming from a remote village in Nigeria, she often felt a mix of awe and nervousness navigating the sprawling campus in England. Everything here felt larger than life. The buildings, the opportunities, and most importantly, the people. It was amidst this chaos that she first met Jabari. He was sitting at a table for the African Students Association, his demeanor calm and self-assured. With his neatly trimmed beard and impeccable fashion, he exuded an aura of sophistication. When their eyes met, Jabari offered a small, polite smile. "New here?" he asked, his voice deep and steady. Ashanti nodded, suddenly feeling a strange flutter in her chest. "From Nigeria," she said softly, still unsure of her place in this new world. "Ghana," he replied, extending his hand. "Jabari Mensah. Welcome to England." Their friendship blossomed over late-night study sessions and endless cups of tea at the campus cafe. Jabari, a political science major, often spoke of his dreams of returning to Ghana to make a difference. Ashanti, studying medicine, shared her own ambitions of building healthcare systems in underserved communities. Though their conversations started as professional exchanges, they gradually ventured into personal territory. Ashanti learned of Jabari's upbringing in an influential Ghanaian family and how he sometimes felt trapped by their high expectations. In turn, Jabari listened intently as Ashanti recounted her journey from her small Nigerian village to this prestigious university. "You're incredibly strong," Jabari told her one evening as they walked back to their dorms. The sincerity in his voice made Ashanti pause. She had never been praised so openly. "And you're incredibly kind," she replied, her heart warming. Their bond deepened, and by the end of their second year they were inseparable. The grand hall was filled with cheers and applause as the names of graduates were called out. Ashanti walked across the stage in her graduation gown, her heart swelling with pride. From a small village in Nigeria to graduating with honors in medicine, this was a moment she had only dreamed of. Among the crowd she spotted Jabari, his smile bright and encouraging. Later that evening, at a celebration they organized with friends, Jabari surprised Ashanti by dropping to one knee. The room fell silent as he held up a delicate diamond ring. "Ashanti, you are my rock, my light, and my future. Will you marry me?" he asked, his voice trembling slightly with emotion. Tears streamed down her face as she nodded. "Yes, Jabari, 1,000 times yes." Their friends erupted into cheers, and in that moment, Ashanti felt like the happiest woman in the world. They married a few weeks later in a simple yet beautiful ceremony. It was a blending of cultures, Ashanti's Nigerian traditions interwoven with Jabari's Ghanaian heritage. They promised to build a life of love, mutual respect, and shared dreams. The air in Accra was warm and heavy with the scent of flowers and sea breeze as the newlyweds arrived at Kotoka International Airport. Jabari's family welcomed them with open arms, and Ashanti was overwhelmed by the grandeur of their home, a sprawling estate surrounded by lush gardens. "This is where we'll begin our life together," Jabari said proudly as he gave her a tour of the house. Ashanti marveled at the ornate furniture and the vibrant artwork that adorned the walls. But as beautiful as everything was, it felt foreign. Jabari's mother, Nana, was gracious but firm in her expectations. "Ashanti, you are now part of the Mensah family. We have traditions and we value respect above all else." Ashanti nodded, eager to please. Though she missed her family in Nigeria, she believed she could make this new place her home. She threw herself into decorating their new house and supporting Jabari in his burgeoning political career. Life in Ghana was different, but it was good, for a time. As months passed, Ashanti began noticing the subtle ways in which she was expected to conform to her new environment. There were unspoken rules about how a Mensah wife should behave, always poised, always accommodating, and always deferential. One evening, during a family dinner, Ashanti mentioned an idea about starting a free clinic in a nearby village. The table fell silent. "Ashanti," Jabari's uncle said with a faint smile, "your place is to support your husband, not to get involved in such strenuous work." Jabari didn't defend her, merely offering a shrug as if to say, "This is how things are." Ashanti swallowed her pride, telling herself it wasn't worth an argument. But the conversation left a bitter taste in her mouth. For the first time she felt the weight of what it meant to be a wife in this household. A role she wasn't sure she fully understood yet. A year into their marriage, Ashanti discovered she was pregnant. She waited until Jabari came home from a late-night meeting to share the news. As he walked into the living room, she handed him a small gift box. Inside was a pair of tiny baby shoes. Jabari's face lit up with joy. "Ashanti, this is wonderful," he exclaimed, lifting her into his arms. For the first time in weeks she felt truly seen. The next few months were a whirlwind of preparations. Ashanti poured her heart into designing the nursery, while Jabari balanced his political ambitions with his role as a father-to-be. Despite the occasional tension, Ashanti felt hopeful that their growing family would bring them closer. But beneath her joy, there was a lingering unease she couldn't quite place, an unspoken tension that simmered just beneath the surface of their lives. One evening, as they sat on the veranda sipping tea, Jabari cleared his throat. "Ashanti, there's something we need to discuss," he began, avoiding her gaze. She set her cup down, sensing the seriousness in his tone. "What is it?" "In our culture," he said slowly, "it's customary for a man of my status to take a second wife, especially as our family grows." Ashanti stared at him, uncomprehending. "A second wife?" Jabari nodded. "It's a tradition. It's not about love, it's about legacy and honoring our heritage." Ashanti felt as if the ground had shifted beneath her. "You never told me this before. How could you expect me to agree to something like this?" "It's not a matter of agreement, Ashanti," Jabari said firmly. "It's what's expected." Her heart sank as she realized that the man she thought she knew so well had kept this part of himself hidden. Ashanti sat on the edge of the bed, staring blankly at the wall as the sounds of celebration filtered through the mansion. Jabari had just returned from a small, private ceremony where he had married Abina, a woman chosen by his family. Ashanti had refused to attend, locking herself in their bedroom. The betrayal cut deep, but the reality of it was even worse. She thought back to the countless arguments leading up to this day, her voice hoarse from pleading with Jabari to reconsider. "This is not the man I married," she had told him just days before. Jabari's response was as cold as it was final. "You married into a family and a culture, Ashanti. This isn't just about you and me, it's bigger than us." Now, as the sounds of laughter and music echoed in her ears, she realized how alone she truly was. The presence of Abina changed everything. Jabari spent less time at home, dividing his attention between his two wives. Abina, confident and self-assured, quickly adapted to life in the Mensa household. She was always surrounded by the elders, who praised her for her understanding of tradition. Ashanti, on the other hand, felt increasingly invisible. Her ideas for the household were dismissed, and her bond with Jabari grew colder by the day. Even Kofi, her baby boy, seemed to draw more attention from the family than she did. One evening, Ashanti found herself sitting alone at the dinner table after everyone else had left. She glanced at the empty chair where Jabari once sat, his absence a painful reminder of how much had changed. "What am I becoming?" she whispered to herself. The vibrant, ambitious woman she once was felt like a distant memory. Life in the Mensa household was not just dictated by Jabari. It was shaped by the elders who held the reins of tradition tightly. Jabari's mother, Nana, became increasingly critical of Ashanti. "Why don't you spend more time with Abina?" Nana asked one afternoon as Ashanti fed Kofi in the garden. Ashanti looked up, her patience wearing thin. "We have nothing in common." Nana frowned, shaking her head. "You must learn to accept your role here, Ashanti. A good wife adapts. You're too stubborn for your own good." Ashanti bit her tongue, unwilling to spark another argument. She felt trapped, torn between her love for her son and the stifling environment of a household that seemed determined to erase her individuality. Ashanti tried to find solace in her role as a mother. Kofi became her anchor, his laughter and tiny milestones brightening her darkest days. But even her bond with him was scrutinized by the family. "Don't coddle him," Nana would say, snatching Kofi away to be cared for by the household staff. "He's a Mensa. He needs to grow up strong." Jabari, once her closest confidant, now seemed like a stranger. When she expressed her struggles, he dismissed her concerns. "You're overreacting, Ashanti," he said one night as he prepared to leave for yet another meeting. "You knew what you were marrying into." Her days blurred into one another, an endless cycle of isolation and silent suffering. She clung to the hope that things would change, but deep down she knew that hope was fading. Ashanti remembered the day Kofi was born as both the happiest and loneliest day of her life. Jabari had been there in the delivery room, holding her hand as she brought their son into the world. But as soon as they returned home, the joy was overshadowed by the expectations of the Mensah family. Kofi was celebrated as the firstborn son of Jabari, with ceremonies and gifts lavished upon him. Yet Ashanti felt more like a vessel than a mother. "Your job is done," one of Jabari's aunts said bluntly during a family gathering. "Now focus on maintaining the household." Ashanti smiled politely, but inside she felt a storm brewing. She had carried Kofi, nurtured him and loved him, yet she was being pushed further to the sidelines. It was as if her identity as a mother and a person didn't matter. As tensions grew in the household, Jabari's frustrations began manifesting in ways Ashanti had never imagined. At first, it was the dismissive tone in his voice when she spoke. Then came the cutting remarks, the cold silences, and eventually the shouting. "You think you're too good for my culture?" he yelled one evening after Ashanti refused to participate in a family tradition she found demeaning. "I never said that," she replied, her voice shaking. "I just want to feel like I belong here." Jabari's anger flared. "You belong where I say you belong, Ashanti. Remember that." The words stung like a slap. For the first time, Ashanti felt afraid of the man she once loved. Months turned into years, and Ashanti felt herself fading further into the background. Her dreams of practicing medicine were long abandoned, her days consumed by the demands of the household. She caught a glimpse of herself in the mirror one morning, a tired, defeated woman with hollow eyes. Where was the Ashanti who had once stood on that graduation stage, full of hope and promise? She realized she had given up too much: her career, her independence, her voice. And now, with Kofi as her only light, she vowed to find a way out of the darkness. Ashanti woke up one morning determined to change her circumstances. She decided to seek allies outside the Mensah household. Though she had been discouraged from forming relationships with outsiders, she knew that isolation would only deepen her despair. She started attending church services in the neighborhood, where she met other women who seemed kind and approachable. One of them, Efua, struck up a conversation with her after a sermon. Efua was a warm, middle-aged woman who spoke with a wisdom that instantly put Ashanti at ease. "You look troubled, my dear," Efua said, her hand resting lightly on Ashanti's arm. Ashanti hesitated, unsure of how much to reveal. "It's just, life has been challenging lately." Efua nodded knowingly. "If you ever need someone to talk to, I'm here." Though Ashanti didn't share everything that day, the simple act of being seen and heard felt like a lifeline. Ashanti began meeting Efua regularly, pouring her heart out about her struggles in the Mensah household. Efua listened without judgment, offering words of encouragement and practical advice. "You are stronger than you think," Efua told her one afternoon over tea. "But you must decide what kind of life you want for yourself and your son." That night, as Ashanti tucked Kofi into bed, she made a silent promise to herself. She would no longer accept a life where her identity was erased and her voice silenced. Her son deserved to grow up in an environment where love and respect were the foundation. Ashanti began secretly saving small amounts of money, hiding it in a hollowed-out book. It wasn't much, but it was a start. With each passing day, her resolve grew stronger. One evening, Jabari returned home in a foul mood. His campaign for a political position had hit a snag, and he took his frustrations out on Ashanti. "You think you can just sit here and do nothing while I carry this family's legacy?" he snapped, slamming his briefcase on the table. Ashanti stood her ground, her voice calm but firm. "I'm doing my best, Jabari. But I'm not a part of this family's legacy. I've been treated like an outsider from the start." His eyes narrowed, his voice dripping with disdain. "You're my wife. You'll do as I say or you'll regret it." For the first time, Ashanti didn't flinch. "You can't break me, Jabari," she said, her tone steady. Inside, she felt a spark of defiance that she hadn't felt in years. Ashanti waited for the right moment, her plan carefully laid out. She had saved enough money for a bus ticket to Nigeria, and Efua had helped her connect with a driver who could take her to the border. The night was dark and quiet as Ashanti packed a small bag with essentials for herself and Kofi. She wrapped her son in a blanket, whispering softly to him as he stirred in his sleep. Stepping out of the house, she felt a rush of fear and freedom. She kept to the shadows, her heart pounding with every step. When she reached the street, the driver was waiting for her as promised. "Are you ready?" he asked, his voice low. Ashanti nodded, clutching Kofi tightly. "Yes. Let's go." As the car pulled away, she looked back at the house one last time. For the first time in years, she felt hope stirring in her heart. The journey to Nigeria was long and fraught with challenges. At each checkpoint, Ashanti prayed that her story wouldn't arouse suspicion. She told the guards that she was visiting family with her son, her voice steady despite the anxiety coursing through her. Kofi, sensing his mother's tension, remained unusually quiet, as if he understood the gravity of the situation. When they finally crossed into Nigerian territory, Ashanti felt a wave of relief wash over her. She thanked the driver profusely and made her way to her village, where her family lived. The familiar sights and sounds of home brought tears to her eyes. Ashanti's family welcomed her with open arms, their joy at seeing her and Kofi outweighing their surprise. Her mother, Amina, held her tightly, whispering, "You're safe now. You're home." For the first time in years, Ashanti felt a sense of belonging. She told her family bits and pieces of what she had endured, though some parts were too painful to relive. With their support, she began rebuilding her life. She started working at a local clinic, using her medical training to help others. Slowly but surely, she rediscovered her identity and strength. Kofi thrived in the loving environment, surrounded by family who cherished him. Ashanti knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy, but she was ready to face it with courage and resilience. Ashanti stood on the porch of her family's modest home, watching the sunrise over the rolling hills of her village. It was a stark contrast to the opulence of the Mensa estate, but here she felt something she hadn't felt in years: peace. With her family's support, she began rebuilding her life. Ashanti started volunteering at a local clinic, her medical knowledge proving invaluable to the community. The work reignited her passion for helping others and reminded her of the dreams she had once nurtured. "Your strength inspires us, Ashanti," the clinic's director told her one afternoon. The words filled her with a sense of purpose, reinforcing the belief that she could start anew. Kofi quickly adapted to life in the village. Though he was too young to understand the full scope of their escape, he seemed to sense the safety and love surrounding them. He spent his days playing with his cousins, chasing chickens in the yard, and soaking in the warmth of his grandmother's affection. One evening, as Ashanti tucked him into bed, he looked up at her with wide, innocent eyes. "Mama, are we staying here forever?" Ashanti paused, her heart aching at the question. "For now, my love. We're home now, and I'll always make sure you're safe." Though she tried to keep her voice steady, the weight of her promise was heavy. She knew their safety wasn't guaranteed as long as Jabari could find them. Back in Ghana, Jabari was livid when he discovered Ashanti and Kofi were gone. The household was in uproar, with his mother, Nana, accusing him of letting his family's honor slip through his fingers. "Do you have any idea how this will look?" Nana hissed. "A Mensa wife abandoning her duties? People will talk." Jabari's anger was fueled not only by the perceived humiliation but also by the loss of control. He began making inquiries through his political connections, determined to locate Ashanti and bring her back. "She has nowhere to run," he muttered to himself. But deep down he feared he had underestimated her resilience. Ashanti began noticing subtle signs that Jabari might be searching for her. A stranger appeared in the village market one afternoon, asking questions about a Nigerian woman with a child. She kept a low profile, avoiding places where she might be recognized. Her brother, Chike, took it upon himself to watch over the family, his protective instincts sharpening with every passing day. "If he comes here, he'll have to deal with me," Chike told Ashanti one evening. She appreciated his support but knew she couldn't put her family at risk. She began thinking of ways to secure their safety permanently, even if it meant moving again. Despite the looming threat of Jabari's pursuit, Ashanti found strength in her work and the support of her community. The clinic director, Dr. Adaora, became a mentor and confidant, encouraging her to dream bigger. "You have the skills and the heart, Ashanti," Dr. Adaora said one afternoon. "Why not apply for funding to open your own clinic?" The idea planted a seed in Ashanti's mind. For years she had felt powerless, but now she realized she had the ability to create something meaningful, not just for herself but for others. With the help of her family and friends, she began drafting a proposal, her confidence growing with every step. One morning, a letter arrived at Ashanti's home, delivered by a courier who quickly disappeared. Her mother handed it to her cautiously, the envelope bearing Jabari's handwriting. Her hands trembled as she opened it. The words were a mix of anger and manipulation, demanding her return to Ghana. "You are still my wife," the letter read. "You belong to me and Kofi is my son. If you do not return, I will come for you." Ashanti's resolve hardened. She had come too far to let Jabari control her again. She shared the letter with her family, who rallied around her with unwavering support. "We'll protect you, Ashanti," her father said firmly. "You're not alone in this." The letter stirred a protective spirit in the village. Ashanti's story spread, and the community came together to shield her and Kofi. Neighbors offered to keep watch, while Chike and his friends organized a discreet security network. Even the village elders, known for their traditional values, sided with Ashanti, recognizing her courage and resilience. "She's one of us," they declared during a council meeting. "We will not let anyone harm her." Their support gave Ashanti a renewed sense of belonging. For the first time in years, she felt the strength of a community standing behind her. As Ashanti worked on her clinic proposal, she also took steps to secure her legal independence. With Dr. Adeora's guidance, she contacted a lawyer to discuss custody rights and protection from Jabari. "You have a strong case," the lawyer told her after reviewing the details. "But it will take time to establish your legal standing, especially across borders." Though the process was daunting, Ashanti refused to give up. She knew that protecting Kofi and ensuring their future was worth every challenge she faced. The lawyer, Mr. Alayemi, became a lifeline for Ashanti. He guided her through the labyrinth of legal processes required to protect herself and Kofi. She filed for sole custody and restraining orders, a step that felt both empowering and terrifying. "Cross-border custody cases can be tricky," Mr. Alayemi explained. "But with enough evidence of his neglect and abuse, we can make a compelling argument in your favor." Ashanti gathered every piece of evidence she could: copies of Jabari's threatening letters, her journal entries detailing his behavior, and even testimonies from Efua and other allies back in Ghana. She was determined to build a case that would ensure her and Kofi's safety. While the legal battle loomed in the background, Ashanti focused on her clinic proposal. With Dr. Adeora's mentorship, she secured funding from a local health initiative aimed at improving rural healthcare. The news of her success spread quickly through the village, earning her admiration and respect. Ashanti's clinic would provide services that had long been out of reach for the community, from maternal care to vaccinations. On the day the funding was approved, her family celebrated with a small feast. As she held Kofi in her lap, watching him laugh and play with his cousins, Ashanti felt a glimmer of the life she had once dreamed of. "This is just the beginning," she told herself, her resolve stronger than ever. Back in Ghana, Jabari's frustration grew with each passing day. His attempts to locate Ashanti had yielded little success, and his political ambitions were faltering under the weight of personal scandal. Driven by desperation, he contacted a private investigator to track her down. The investigator's trail eventually led to Ashanti's village, but the community's united front thwarted any attempts to extract information. "They're protecting her," the investigator reported back. Jabari's anger boiled over. "If I can't bring her back willingly, I'll force her hand," he muttered. He began considering more drastic measures, oblivious to the fact that Ashanti was already preparing for the possibility of his arrival. The community continued to rally around Ashanti, reinforcing their commitment to her safety. Chike, ever vigilant, set up a network of trusted neighbors to alert the family if any strangers entered the village. Ashanti was moved by the outpouring of support. "I don't know how to thank you all," she said during a community meeting. "You've given us so much, Ashanti," one elder replied. "Now it's our turn to stand by you." Their words bolstered her confidence. She knew that whatever came next, she wouldn't face it alone. One afternoon, Ashanti was walking to the clinic when she noticed a man loitering near the marketplace. His gaze lingered on her for a moment too long before he turned away. She quickened her pace, her heart pounding. When she reached the clinic, she immediately informed Dr. Adeora, who advised her to remain vigilant. That night, Ashanti couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. She double-checked the locks on the doors and windows, keeping Kofi close by. Though the man didn't reappear in the following days, the encounter served as a chilling reminder that Jabari's reach extended further than she had hoped. Ashanti knew she couldn't afford to live in fear. She threw herself into her work at the clinic, using it as both a distraction and a source of strength. One evening, as she reviewed patient records, Kofi sat beside her, doodling on a piece of paper. "What are you drawing, my love?" she asked, leaning over to see. "It's you, Mama," Kofi replied, showing her a stick figure with a big smile. Ashanti felt a lump in her throat. In that moment she was reminded of why she was fighting so hard. Kofi's future depended on her strength, and she was determined to give him the life he deserved. The day Jabari arrived in the village was one Ashanti would never forget. He came unannounced, his presence an ominous shadow over the peaceful community. Ashanti was at the clinic when she received the warning. Chike burst through the door, his face grim. "He's here." Her blood ran cold. "Where?" "He's at the market asking questions. The elders are trying to stall him, but you need to get home." Ashanti's mind raced as she quickly gathered her things. She knew this confrontation was inevitable, but she wasn't prepared for it to happen so soon. When Ashanti arrived home, Jabari was already there, sitting in the living room like he owned the place. Her parents stood nearby, their expressions tense but resolute. "Hello, Ashanti," Jabari said, his tone deceptively calm. She stood tall, refusing to let him intimidate her. "Why are you here, Jabari?" "To bring my son home," he replied, his gaze shifting to Kofi, who clung to Ashanti's skirt. "Kofi is home," she said firmly. "And you're not welcome here." Jabari's mask of calm slipped for a moment, revealing the anger beneath. "You don't get to decide that. He's my son and you're still my wife." Ashanti squared her shoulders. "Not anymore. I've filed for custody and protection. You have no power over me here." The tension in the room was palpable as Ashanti and Jabari stared each other down. Her parents stood behind her, their silent presence a testament to their unwavering support. "You've always been stubborn, Ashanti," Jabari said, his voice low and menacing. "But this isn't over. You think these villagers can protect you forever?" Her father stepped forward, his voice firm. "She doesn't need to rely on us forever. She has the law on her side and the courage you clearly lack." Jabari's jaw tightened, but he said nothing. The village elders soon arrived, their authority adding weight to the standoff. "You're trespassing, Jabari Mensa," one elder declared. "Leave this village. Now." Though furious, Jabari realized he was outnumbered. He stood abruptly, his gaze shifting to Ashanti one last time. "You'll regret this." As he stormed out, Ashanti exhaled a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. After Jabari's departure, the elders called an emergency meeting to discuss the situation. Ashanti shared the details of her legal case, emphasizing the importance of keeping Kofi safe. "We need to strengthen our defenses," Chike suggested. "He won't stop until he gets what he wants." The community agreed to organize a rotating watch system to monitor the village. Meanwhile, Ashanti worked with Mr. Alayemi to expedite her custody case, gathering additional testimonies and evidence to bolster her claim. Her determination grew with every step. "This isn't just about me," she told her mother that evening. "It's about Kofi's future, and every woman who's ever felt powerless." Jabari's defeat in the village only fueled his desperation. He began using his political influence to pressure authorities in Nigeria to act on his behalf. "They're hiding her," he told his lawyer, pushing for custody filings in Ghanaian courts. "I'll do whatever it takes to bring her back." But his efforts were met with resistance. The evidence of his abuse and neglect made it difficult to present a favorable case, even in his home country. His frustration deepened when word spread about Ashanti's clinic and the growing support she was receiving. Her resilience was a direct challenge to his ego, and he couldn't stand it. Despite the looming threat of Jabari's actions, Ashanti poured herself into the clinic project. Construction was well underway, and the community rallied to help, donating time, materials, and labor. Kofi often accompanied her to the site, his laughter filling the air as he played with the workers. His joy reminded Ashanti of why she was fighting so hard. Dr. Adaora visited frequently, providing guidance and encouragement. "You're not just building a clinic, Ashanti," she told her. "You're building a legacy." The thought filled Ashanti with pride. She was no longer the frightened girl who had fled Ghana. She was a mother, a healer, and a woman reclaiming her power. One day, Ashanti received an unexpected letter from Efua, her confidant in Ghana. The letter was brief but urgent, warning her of Jabari's escalating efforts to track her down. "He's becoming reckless," Efua wrote. "Be careful. He may resort to extreme measures." The warning unsettled Ashanti, but it also reinforced her resolve. She contacted Mr. Alayemi, who advised her to increase her security measures and ensure all legal filings were up to date. "We're close to securing a judgment in your favor," he assured her. "Stay strong, Ashanti." The community's vigilance paid off when another stranger was spotted near the village, asking questions about Ashanti. The man was quickly confronted and escorted out, with a stern warning never to return. "You have no place here," one elder told him. "This is a place of peace and we will protect our own." Ashanti was deeply moved by the community's solidarity. It reminded her that, despite Jabari's threats, she was not alone. The incident also prompted her to consider additional safeguards, including plans to move to a larger city if necessary. Months of tireless effort culminated in a court hearing where Ashanti's case was presented. Mr. Alayemi argued passionately, highlighting Jabari's history of abuse and neglect. Ashanti testified with courage, recounting her experiences with honesty and clarity. Though the process was emotionally draining, she felt a sense of liberation in finally speaking her truth. When the verdict was announced, she could hardly believe it. The court granted her full custody of Kofi and issued a restraining order against Jabari, barring him from contacting her or entering Nigeria without permission. Tears streamed down her face as she hugged her family outside the courthouse. "We did it," she whispered, holding Kofi tightly. With the legal battle behind her, Ashanti focused on building a brighter future for herself and Kofi. The clinic was completed and officially opened with a celebration that brought the entire village together. "Your courage has inspired us all," an elder said during the ceremony. "You've shown us what it means to rise above adversity." As Ashanti cut the ribbon, surrounded by friends and family, she felt an overwhelming sense of gratitude. This was her moment of triumph, a testament to her resilience, the strength of her community, and the unwavering love she had for her son. The clinic quickly became the heart of the village, serving not just as a place for medical care but as a symbol of hope. Ashanti's days were filled with purpose as she treated patients, mentored young women, and organized community health programs. Kofi, now a curious and energetic toddler, often accompanied her to the clinic. He was a favorite among the staff, who affectionately called him Dr. Kofi as he toddled around with a toy stethoscope. One afternoon, as Ashanti finished treating a patient, an elder approached her with a warm smile. "You've done something incredible here," he said. "You've not only healed our bodies but also our spirits." Ashanti's heart swelled with pride. She had turned her pain into something meaningful, and the joy of giving back to her community was immeasurable. One morning, as Ashanti prepared for the day's work, a familiar figure appeared at the clinic's entrance. It was Efua, her closest friend from Ghana. Ashanti ran to her, embracing her tightly. "Efua, how did you get here?" "I couldn't stay away," Efua said, her eyes glistening with emotion. "I had to see you and make sure you were truly safe." The two women spent hours catching up, laughing and crying as they shared stories of their lives since Ashanti's escape. Efua marveled at the clinic and the vibrant community Ashanti had built around her. "You've turned your pain into power," Efua said, admiration evident in her voice. "I've never been prouder to call you my friend." Unbeknownst to Ashanti, Jabari had not given up entirely. His pride wouldn't allow him to accept defeat, and he began leveraging his remaining connections to launch one last attempt to assert his control. This time he sought legal recourse through international channels, claiming parental rights and accusing Ashanti of abducting Kofi. Though his case lacked merit, it stirred anxiety in Ashanti when she was informed of the proceedings. "This man will stop at nothing," she confided in Mr. Alayemi. "Let him try," her lawyer replied confidently. "You've already proven your case. He can't undo the truth." Though reassured, Ashanti knew she had to remain vigilant. She wouldn't let Jabari's actions derail the life she had built. The success of the clinic began to attract attention beyond the village. Ashanti was invited to speak at conferences and workshops, sharing her journey and advocating for women's rights and rural healthcare. Her story inspired others, particularly women who had faced similar struggles. They saw in Ashanti a beacon of hope, proof that it was possible to rise above even the most harrowing circumstances. During one such event, a young woman approached her with tears in her eyes. "You've given me the courage to leave my own abusive marriage," she said. Ashanti embraced her, feeling a deep sense of fulfillment. "You're stronger than you know," she replied. "And you're not alone." Though Ashanti had found peace, there were still wounds that needed healing. She began attending counseling sessions with a therapist recommended by Dr. Adora. In these sessions she confronted the trauma of her past, learning to release the guilt and anger that had lingered for years. "I've spent so much time fighting to survive," she told the therapist one day. "Now I want to learn how to truly live." As the months passed, Ashanti found herself letting go of the pain Jabari had caused. While she would never forget, she no longer allowed his actions to define her. Years later, Ashanti stood in front of a packed auditorium, delivering a keynote address at an International Women's Empowerment Summit. Her story of survival and resilience had brought her to this moment, and the applause that followed her speech was a testament to the impact she had made. Kofi, now a bright and curious child, sat in the front row, beaming with pride. After the event, he ran to her side, clutching her hand. "Mama, you're amazing," he said, his voice full of admiration. Ashanti knelt to his level, brushing a hand over his curls. "And you, my love, are my greatest inspiration." As they left the auditorium, Ashanti felt a profound sense of gratitude. She had not only reclaimed her life but had built a future filled with love, purpose, and possibility. This was her story, a story of courage, resilience, and the unbreakable bond between a mother and her child. And it was only the beginning. As the years passed, Ashanti's life in Nigeria flourished. The clinic expanded, now offering specialized care for women and children, and she became a renowned figure in the field of rural healthcare. But for all her professional success, her most cherished moments were the quiet ones she spent with Kofi. One evening, as they sat together watching the sun set over the village, Kofi turned to his mother. "Mama, when I grow up, I want to help people just like you." Ashanti smiled, her heart swelling with pride. "You already do, my love. You inspire me every day." Kofi had grown into a curious and empathetic young boy, always eager to lend a hand in the clinic and connect with those around him. His bright future was a constant reminder of how far Ashanti had come from the pain and fear that once defined her life. One day, Ashanti received a message from Efua, who was planning to visit Nigeria. It had been several years since their last reunion, and Ashanti was eager to catch up with her closest friend. Efua arrived with a wide smile and open arms. "I can't believe how much you've achieved, Ashanti," she said, looking around at the bustling clinic. "It's like you've become a pillar of this community." The two women spent hours reminiscing and laughing, recalling the early days of Ashanti's journey and all the struggles they had faced together. Efua had also flourished, opening her own health initiative in Ghana, focusing on women's mental health and empowerment. "You've made such a difference in the lives of others," Efua said, admiration in her voice. "And you did it on your own terms without ever losing your identity." Ashanti's eyes filled with gratitude. "And I couldn't have done it without you, Efua. You were there when I needed you the most." While Ashanti had once feared that her heart would never heal from the pain of her past, time had proven her wrong. She had learned to trust herself again and in the process had found love anew. Amir, a fellow healthcare professional, had become a steady presence in her life. He had been a part of the team at the clinic from the beginning, and over the years their bond had deepened. One evening as they sat together under the stars, Amir took Ashanti's hand in his. "I know your past hasn't been easy," he said gently, "but I want you to know that I see you, the strong, compassionate, and incredible woman that you are." Ashanti smiled, her heart full. "I never imagined I would find someone who understands me this way," she admitted. "But with you I feel safe and loved." Their relationship grew stronger with each passing day, built on mutual respect and a shared vision for the future. Though Ashanti had long put her past with Jabari behind her, one final challenge emerged. Jabari, still determined to regain control over his life and reclaim what he felt was his, made one last attempt to reach out to Ashanti. One afternoon she received a formal letter from him, claiming that he had changed and was seeking reconciliation for the sake of Kofi. The letter was a mix of apologies, promises, and subtle threats. It was clear that Jabari had not truly changed, but Ashanti could not help but feel a sting of anger and confusion. Amir, upon hearing the news, immediately reassured her. "You've come so far, Ashanti. You know who you are now. Don't let him disrupt your peace." Ashanti took a deep breath, her mind made up. She would not allow Jabari's manipulation to affect her life again. She shredded the letter and sent a clear message through her lawyer. She and Kofi were no longer a part of his life and there would be no further contact. As Ashanti and Amir's relationship blossomed, Kofi thrived in an environment filled with love and support. The three of them quickly became a family, bonded by shared values and a deep commitment to making the world a better place. One evening, as they sat at dinner together, Kofi looked up at his mother with a serious expression. "Mama, when I grow up, I want to be a doctor and help people like you and Dr. Amir." Ashanti laughed, her heart swelling. "You already help, my love. You help every day just by being you." Kofi beamed and Amir reached out to ruffle his hair. "And I have no doubt you'll do great things, Kofi," he said warmly. As they finished their meal, Ashanti reflected on how far she had come. From the frightened young woman who had fled Ghana to escape an abusive marriage, to the confident, loving mother she had become. Life had not been easy, but it had shaped her into someone stronger and more resilient than she could have ever imagined. And now, with Amir and Kofi by her side, Ashanti finally felt the full embrace of the love and family she had always deserved. Ashanti's clinic continued to grow, offering not only healthcare but also programs for women's empowerment and youth education. Her story was shared in local schools, inspiring young girls to pursue their dreams and never settle for less than they deserved. One day, a group of schoolchildren visited the clinic as part of a field trip, and Ashanti took the opportunity to speak to them about the power of resilience. "I want you to remember something," she said to the girls in the group. "No matter where you come from or what challenges you face, you are strong. You have the power to change your world." As the children clapped, Ashanti felt a deep sense of fulfillment. She had not only rebuilt her own life but had laid the foundation for others to build theirs. Kofi stood beside her, his hand in hers, and in that moment, Ashanti realized that her journey had come full circle. Her struggles had shaped her into the woman she was today, but it was the love and hope she had shared with others that would define her legacy. Years later, Ashanti stood in front of a new generation of women, delivering a speech at an international conference on women's rights. Her story was no longer just about survival, it was about triumph. She spoke not only of her own experiences but of the collective strength of women everywhere who had fought for their voices to be heard. She spoke of the importance of solidarity and community. As she concluded her speech, she looked out into the audience, where Kofi now sat, a young man with bright eyes full of dreams. "Mama, you're amazing," he whispered as the audience erupted in applause. Ashanti smiled, her heart full. She had built a life of purpose, love, and strength. A life she could be proud of. And it was just the beginning of a legacy that would live on through the generations.